Alright guys, I know I've been spamming with the gameplay videos, but now I'm going to talk about something I'm sure most of you have either been through or will go through in the future, and that is working. It blows, like really hard, like it's actually really terrible, and even worse than school. I mean, I'd low-key rather go to work than school, because you get paid, but if you got paid to go to school, or if you had to work for free, then yeah, I choose the other one, because having a job is abysmal. And even though having a job is bad enough on its own, it's already a separate GI for me to just get a job in the first place. I remember when I was like 12, all I could think about was how I could get some funds, so I could cop some games or something. But unfortunately, that period between when you're like 10 and 16 is the lamest age range, because you're too old to get a bunch of candy and play games in school, but you're too young to drive or make real nigga moves, so it's a limbo of ass. I mean, despite that, one of the best years of my life was when I was 13, but we'll get to that in a future video maybe. Anyways, at 12-year-old, me and my nigga that lived next door would go on quest to get some funds. So our first plan was to travel through the neighborhood looking for leaves to rake, but all the niggas said they had that covered, so it was grave. I mean, we did find one guy to rake leaves for, but it took like 7 years and 300 bucks to get his stuff in order, and we only had like $10 each. Like, what the hell? So since that endeavor proved too dead to continue, we chose to look for other means of getting money. Then I guess we decided to walk dogs or something, so we went door to door asking the guys what the move was, and someone let us walk their dog for the low, so it was lit. But we were off one, so the dog escaped or something and ended up in the sewers. We Negroes dad had spent hours looking for a dog with no pay. We were even about to call 12, but then something happened I guess, and the dog was retrieved. I forget the details though cause it was like a million years ago, but for some reason the owner wasn't pissed at us and let us live the rest of our days in freedom. Also, I don't think he paid us, so overall it was a waste of time. With those L's out of the way, I realized that I would have to wait years before I was able to make some funds. In the meantime, I was doing online surveys, but those were asked too. Each survey I was eligible for only came like once a week, and it was only worth like $1, so I didn't even make 100 till like a year, so that was dead. So the very day I turned 16, I spent the whole morning filing out applications to different jobs and stuff, and it was chill. I mean, not really, cause the applications were long as hell. Like, they'd be asking too many questions like they're the police or something. Then they'd be making you fill out these lame ass surveys like, what do you want from us? They said stuff at the beginning like answer honestly, but we would have to be drunk to do that. Why would we make ourselves look like anything but a model worker? All of that honesty stuff dead. But then like a month passed and none of the niggas hit me back up, so I felt some type of way. Eventually I found out that I actually had to call the Negroes back up and ask them to check out my application. So I did, and I went around and started getting different interviews. My first interview was at Dr. Chipotle's. It was dumb. The guy was asking questions and then was like, yeah, piss off, we don't want you here. And at first, I was almost in my feelings because I just wanted to get the job search nonsense out of the way. But then I realized if I actually worked there, then I would have to do the most. So I guess in the end of the day it all worked out. Anyway, after some time, Little Caesars decided to give me an interview. And before I start this part of the video, let me just say that Little Caesars is diarrhea as garbage, and I hated them even before I started working at them for their trash ass pizzas. In fact, I feel some way about them so strongly, especially after working under such trash conditions, that my very first trash video was going to be called Little Caesars is Trash, and I made it all the way back last year. Unfortunately, right after I run and recorded it, the founder of Little Caesars passed away, and I don't know the guy, so I really don't have any problems with him. And I knew if I put out the video at that time, then all the niggas would look at me funny. So I decided not to make the video, but now I'm about to go over all the nonsense that went down while I was working there. So anyway, after the first unprofessional interview, the lame said they would call me up for a second one. Of course, since competency is difficult for scrubs, I'm the one who ended up having to call them back, and then we scheduled the next interview, and it was just about how to use a computer system or something, I don't know. But eventually I got the job, and I had to get all the government stuff in order, so that was lame. But also they made me wear a uniform and some ugly ass hats. I mean, I already can't dress for a crap, so it's whatever. Anyway, on my first day I was put in the back like the Negro I am, and was shown how to put pizzas in a box by some hoe. She was annoying. Like, she was one of those talkative hoes that was friends with everyone, but these niggas weren't funny, so I can't laugh at their lame ass jokes. Then these niggas got the nerve to feel some type of way about me, cause I ain't like their lame humor. It was grave. Anyway, putting pizzas in boxes was an L in itself. It gets tiring after some time, and the stuff they put the pizzas in is hot as hell, and I regularly burned myself. But the worst part of it all was the heat. Look, I know I say in the heat like bacteria, but it was really a desert out there working in front of an oven. I might as well have been seeing mirages. Like, it felt like they put me in the oven itself, and then they would make us stay there for hours, cause when I worked it was usually busy as hell. Also next to the pizza was the place we made the wings right behind the cashier. One time a bunch of niggas from school ran up on me while I was working, and it was one of the deadest experiences I've ever had working. When I wasn't working in the blazing sun, I was able to work in the colder part where they make all the dough and stuff. It was way chiller and much less annoying, but I actually had to think and measure stuff, so it was dead too. Also, I had to work with machines that I barely knew how to work, so it was a trash experience overall. Also, sometimes they made me clean the toilets and the floors or something, but it only happened like a few times, so I'm not tripping over it. The worst part about work is that all the niggas decided to conveniently make moves while I was doing slave work, like the Negroes they are. Like, seriously, I would get texts all the time saying, oh, come to the park, The whole crew is here all the time when I was at work, but then all of a sudden on days I was free, my phone was dry as hell. It was lame. One thing about working at Little Caesars is that they let us eat some of the leftover pizzas that nobody claims sometimes. But usually all the assholes and bums I worked with would get finished eating them before I got a chance to take some. My coworkers were fake as hell. They all turned on me because the hoe that showed me how to do stuff felt some way about the fact that I thought she was lame. The only one that wasn't a waste of space was some guy that hated working there too. He went back to his old job pretty quick though, so I was left alone with the ops. These weebs would go in the back and talk shit about me while eating pizza, while I was actually putting that work in. One day when it was really busy, even the fake ass manager had to step in and help me put pizzas in the box, and despite seeing my hard work with his own eyes, he still told me over the phone that I had to piss off and stop working there. I got the news while I was walking back home from school. Also, I didn't have my key, so I was locked out of my own house for hours, so that was an L. But I was kinda conflicted about my fire raid. On one hand, I didn't really care because I hated working there anyway. I was looking for other jobs. But on the other hand, that was the only job I had, so I knew if I didn't get a job fast, then I would go back to being a broke boy. Also, the hoe from work went to my school, and as if that wasn't bad enough, she was also in my class. And as if that wasn't bad enough, she was also even at my table. But then she started talking slick, and some bum who knew she was an op tried to instigate something, so I had to piss off from that table. Anyway, eventually one of my niggas told me at the place that he works at, and how it's easy and lit, so I decided that was the next move. He worked at Party City, and it was after working here that I learned once and for all that niggas is just snakes no matter where they are. So I was able to get an interview at Party City, of course, because like who wouldn't want to hire me? And on my first day I went around and put stuff in the shelves where they're supposed to be or something. It was chill. But then they decided to put me in the back, which most people getting their feelings over, but being the antisocial nigga that I am, working in the back was like a way of life for me. I would wear some radio thing, and niggas would ask me to pull ugly ass outfits out of boxes and give it to them on the outside. So it was easy enough. Also, they knew how to turn on the AC, so it was definitely better than my time at Little Caesars. I mean, some things were still trash though. Like I had to get on a ladder for most of the costumes, and some of the boxes were in very trash conditions and in the cuts, so it would take an eon for me to find them. But still, it was like way better than burning myself and getting screwed over by my coworkers. Also, one time me and the nigga that told me about the job working in the back, and some big ass ladder almost fell on me and turned me into a pack before he warned me. I mean, it wasn't moving that fast, and I probably would have noticed even if he hadn't said anything. But yeah, I could have been on a shit if I didn't stop that nonsense from happening. But one thing that sucked was that I was often not really busy. And I know what you're thinking. Chief, how can not having work be a con, you runaway slave? Well, it was because I would sit on my ass on my phone for like an hour waiting for stuff to do. And not only would it drain my battery, but it would also make time go like way slower, which is dead as hell. I mean, towards the end of my stay was like the Halloween season, so more niggas started showing up, and it was really busy, so that problem was out of the way. Sometimes my bosses were off one, and decided to make me work on the outside and actually deal with customers or something. And these customers be dumbasses. Like they always asking questions and acting even more worthless than they would have in any other circumstance or place. I mean, there wasn't actually that many times where I had to deal with them, but still the few times I did were enough to make me know I could never be a full-on sales associate. But then I guess the niggas decided to switch up on me. One of the niggas I went to school with said the guys were talking mad shit about me amongst themselves, and I was like, whatever, bums will be bums. But then they really went too far. You see, I was working there my junior year of high school, so I decided I'll have to go to the final football game of the season, even though I don't care about the sports, but just to have a lit time. But sadly I was scheduled to work that day, and the bitch ass manager wouldn't let me work another day unless I had someone cover for me. And I already called out before, so I knew I couldn't get away with doing it again. So I decided to start contacting some people to cover my shift for me. So I did, and some fake ass hoe said she would cover me. And I even went to work that day to let my lame ass managers know who would be covering my shift, so they had no excuse for the wickedness they pulled later. Anyway, I went to the football game, and it was a waste of time because my school is trash, but you niggas already know that. But anyway, when I get back to work, all I see are the managers looking and talking to me different, and I'm like, what the hell? It turned out that the hoe that said she'd cover for me decided that commitments were fictional, and basically all the bosses blamed it on me. So after a long day at work, this one fake ass manager in particular said I was gonna make it out of the trial run and be a permanent employee, but because some thought didn't show up like she was supposed to, I had to piss off. So of course I was in my feelings when I went home. But then next thing I hear, the manager told all the workers that I was sobbing or something, and at that point I really wanted to empty a clip. Not only did they do me dirty by taking some hoe's word over my actions in Little Caesars, but they also did me dirty by lying on my name in Party City. And now I really feel some type of way about both of those businesses, because who knows what evil is done in their other locations. Anyway, after all that backstabbing, I decided I wasn't gonna work for a minute, because I was tired of the nonsense. But then I said never mind after like a month or two, and started the familiar process of applying to jobs and being told to piss off by hiring managers. But then I got a call back from Foot Locker for an interview, so I knew it could finally be lit. But the thing is, unlike all my other interviews, this was like a group thing, so I had to sit in a circle with like 20 other Negroes, and we each had to show the manager why we were worth the time of day. Even though everywhere else I'm a shy pussy that generally avoids communication, I decided that I couldn't fly there, and I was one of the first Negroes to start answering questions, and basically act like I could actually talk to niggas. So I got the fateful call back the next week that I had been hired, and of course it was a cause for celebration. When niggas from school found out they could get a deal for the low from me, all of a sudden these fake ass niggas wanna act like my buddy, saying what's up with the discount? Like bitch, you ain't getting anything. Where your ass was hot dog when niggas wouldn't feed me. But anyway, when I started working there, I had to go through orientation. And I quickly realized I want to be able to actually talk to niggas and get them to buy shoes. Because like I said, customers are trash. But luckily for once, the managers at Foot Locker were actually real as hell. And they let me switch over to being a stock associate before I even started working. So that was chill. The first day I worked for like 8 hours or something, which is a longer shift than I ever had before. Yet somehow it didn't feel that long because I always had stuff to do. What I did was I would arrange boxes where they're supposed to go by number and get boxes of shoes for the sales associates. So basically the same thing I was doing in Party City, except without the fake niggas. But still, after some time I just didn't feel like working anymore. First off, I didn't know any of the niggas there. I mean, there was one nigga that I went to school with that worked with me for like a week, but one of my other niggas told me he was talking shit, so until further notice he's a nobody. But also I was in my feelings because I was surrounded by all these clean ass shoes, while my broke ass was stuck wearing beat up Vans, so I looked completely out of place. And before you ask why I don't cop some shoes then with my dumb ass, well that's cause my parents would only let me work at most 20 hours a week, and between paying for gas and food and other nonsense, I didn't have the funds to cop any shoes that could actually make my life turn around. And also I wanted to make videos for you niggas, so I decided to work for a couple more weeks before I put in my resignation. And of course since the niggas who work there are actually real, they acknowledged that I was putting in work when I was there, and they told me I was a good ass employee. So for all you guys in the comments talking about, oh, you weren't fired because everyone was fake, you were fired because you can't work to save your life, well the niggas at Foot Locker will beg to differ. But yeah, that's pretty much the extent of my experiences working. Hopefully any potential future boss I have doesn't fuck me over like they did in Little Caesar or Party City, and it's actually real like the one in Foot Locker. But yeah, having a job is garbage water.
A few years ago, I was down so terrible that I had to take a job at Domino's, but don't get it twisted, I'm still down bad now, just not to the extent I was back then. Consider subscribing to help with that. But yeah, in the fall of 2019 I was thinking, well, my funds are low and school be taxing, so I might as well get a job. As you can see from my old video about working, my first job was at a pizza place called Little Caesars, so I know it wouldn't be too much of an L to retrain me. The thing about Little Losers is, even though I hated working there with my mind, body, and everything within me, the work itself wasn't actually that butthole ravishing. It was mostly the fake bums I worked with that made me hate it. So when applying to Domino's, I just had to make sure they weren't tweaking like that. I'm pretty sure after I applied, I had to be the one to call them to see if they got my application and all that. It's been a minute, Negroes, so my memory on this is a little cloudy, but I think on the day I was supposed to get interviewed, the place was closed down for inspection. You made me haul my ass all the way over here, and for what? When I finally went to take the interview, the guy conducting it was on his phone for like a minute before anything even happened. Like at this point, my mind is jumping between a mix of emotions, cause on one hand, if this is how niggas are operating as managers, then I got nothing to worry about as far as downtime is concerned, but on the other, I'm like, am I gonna have to wait to make moves here? Cause I don't know if that can go. After my interview, or two, like I said, it was a minute ago, Negro, I don't remember everything. It was time for me to start working. Now, in Little Brutus, my job was mainly to put pizzas in the box, but the business made it like 10 times worse. At Domino's, I was more in charge of making the pizzas. Like yeah, I would also be putting them in boxes after they were done in the oven, but that was mostly on slower shifts. I feel like more often, I was putting all the ingredients on the pizza while other people were putting it in boxes. Or the other way around, like I'd be the one putting them in boxes while other people were making the pizza. But a little more often it was me working the pizzas, and I gotta say, not standing in front of that sun-ass oven all day was definitely an improvement over Little Sissies. Now when making the pizza, you're supposed to stretch the dough out first, but I was kinda ass at that, so the other guys would make a bunch of pre-made dough for me to put the stuff on, and there's like a whole chart of how many toppings to put, depending on the size and all that, and requests, and they got an order to make it on too. Like you gotta do an all certain methodology, like we're scientists. Like they really be doing the most, but I get it. Anything to stop the customers from yapping. And speaking of customers, the Domino's is on the same road as the university I go to, but that was before I went there. It was just a bunch of randos in the middle of the road. The guys who worked at Domino's were either delivery drivers or in-store workers. And all of the in-store workers were also managers, because they've been there for a minute. So like during work, they'd be talking to each other, while I just sit there in the background on my phone. Cause nigga, I'm not about to relate to these grown men who've clearly known each other for years. And this isn't even me dissing. Like I've been socially inept for years, and you should know this, but the guys were mostly cool, you know. I wouldn't say I was beefing with them, but there was this one guy that was mainly a delivery driver, but sometimes helped out. And I feel like whenever I was on the phone, he was like looking down on me, like judging me. And I'm just thinking like, what does it matter to you, my guy? There's no work for me to do, and all my coworkers, which means all my managers, be spamming the phone use. So what are you on my ass for? But like I said, I just felt that. I mean, he never confronted me or told me to get off my phone or any of those L behaviors. Honestly though, it might all be in my useless mind. Like there's a big chance he thought nothing of me being on my phone and I was just projecting because I needed to invent a problem that's completely unnecessary. But I don't know, like I was just getting that vibe from him. Another person I don't know about was this other delivery guy that was one of the more playful types. Like, you know, the guy that kind of acts like a tryhard and tells jokes to and about you before he even knows if you're about that or not. Like I said, I don't or didn't have beef with anyone, so I hold nothing against anyone there. I'm not gonna flame them like I flame most of the bums I mentioned on this channel, but yeah, there's like a 0% chance I'll be chilling with them outside work. Now, even though having a job itself might be ass cancer, working there was actually kinda lame, you know? I would have to go get stuff from the freezer when they ran out, and I didn't always know where they were. I mean, that was annoying, but not that big a deal. I just hate the uncertainty of not knowing exactly where something is. Like, I have to be in control. But the main source of my despair was the fact that you could just be chilling in front of the oven when all of a sudden, like a million orders come out in the middle of the shift, and now you have to work like you're on the plantation for a minute. Honestly though, like I said, it wasn't that much of a tough thing to do. I just hate feeling tied down to a job while I could be at home making videos instead. So after a while, going to school in the morning and afternoon and then working in the evening is kind of not fun or something. Like it kind of makes me hate breathing. But yeah, I wasn't trying to do all that. Plus I got an offer to animate something for more money than I was getting at Domino's. So I told the guys after like 3 weeks of working that I was done, and my last time working was with the main manager, I think. Like I said, all my in-restaurant coworkers were managers, cause like there was only 4 of them, but this guy was like the manager of the managers. He was a cool guy, you know, he wasn't on my ass or anything, and he told me I could come back whenever. I mean, that's not gonna happen, cause they were paying me third world wages, but I like having the option, you know. In the end, Domino's makes decent pizzas, Little Caesars is trash, and my managers may have been getting the racks, but I'm not trying to work in front of the oven for a broke boy's wage before I can get paid the funds I need.
Alright, so today I'm going to be telling you guys a story about one of the worst jobs I ever had. In fact, it probably was just the worst job I ever had. So a couple years ago, I was working as a customer service representative for an investment bank that I'm sure you've all heard of. And the thing is, like, when I was working there to start off, it was not that horrible. All they had me do at first was just basically look at documents that were submitted by clients. So people would have accounts. I wouldn't really be talking to customers directly like they said I would on the job description, I guess. Instead, what would happen was there would be people who were calling on behalf of other customers, and then I would talk to them about what was cool or what wasn't on their accounts, stuff like that. But at first, I didn't even have to talk at all. All I had to do was just look at papers that were submitted and see if whatever the agents gave for their customers matched what they were supposed to match, or all the documents were in order and stuff. And I'm like, this is the easiest thing ever. And mind you, I was getting paid more for this job than I've ever been paid before. The last job I had before this was minimum wage. My state at the time was like $8 and something cents. It was like trash. This is like way bigger. I mean, it wasn't like a lot, but you know what I mean. Like it was a lot more than it was before. So I was feeling myself. And on top of that, it was like a hybrid role too. I was like, man, this job is perfectly fine. And then disaster struck. So by like the second month, sometime like late July, early August or whatever, they were like, okay, time for you to actually do what you were signed up to do. And they had me on phones. They had me trying to do like phone calls and stuff. And I have worked after this customer service jobs and stuff. This was too much. The problem wasn't like customers being rude or something, whatever, because first off, they weren't even customers I was talking to. It was like other agents. They didn't even get that far. The reason this was unbearable for me was because I literally did not know what I was doing. I had to have 50,000 tabs open to understand what policy whatever agent was talking about at a time. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, I just can't keep doing this. It would be so frustrating to be in a call where somebody would be talking to me and I would have no idea what I was doing. Then I have to put them in hold and try to ask some supervisor what I was supposed to be doing at the time. And I wouldn't really get a response, or the response I was getting, I wouldn't understand. Or I would try to, not even ask for help. I don't want to waste anyone's time. And even if I try to ask, it'll take a long time anyway. Let me just try to find whatever they're looking for in the tabs. And that would take a million years. Then when I find the tab I'm looking for, I even knew what it's saying. And it was a whole bunch of nonsense and it was horrible. And also, my particular computer, the way it worked was, even though we were talking on headphones, there was an actual like literal phone on our desks that we would have to do some sort of code in to transfer calls to the correct department. That was a lot of calls. A lot of calls were people who were like trying to do something specific that didn't really apply to our department. So we'd have to transfer them to somebody else who actually did what they were talking about. But first of all, I didn't even know what the correct department was half the time. And two, even if I did know what it was, my specific phone had like a broken transfer button. Now it was just a complete L because I would try to transfer, it wouldn't work, and then there'd be a bunch of people on the other line who just didn't get anything happen for them. And at a certain point, I was like, yeah, I just can't keep doing this. One time in the middle of my shift, I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can go like Uber Eats driving or something. So during my lunch, I don't know if I downloaded the app then and there or if I already downloaded it beforehand, whatever the case was. I took like an order for Uber Eats and I delivered it. And I was like, this is so much better than the nonsense I have to deal with regularly. So I think I just like didn't go back to work for that day. Then I come back later, like the next day, and I'm like, yeah, this still is trash, horrible. So I'm taken aside by my like main manager guy, and he's like, hey, I noticed that you just stopped showing up yesterday. What happened? And at first I was trying to be like, well, I don't really get into it. It's kind of, you know, whatever. I don't want to talk about it because it's kind of crusty to like tell your boss like, oh, I just like left the job to like do something else. But after a while he was like really pressing it, and I was like, okay, fine. I went to do Uber Eats driving, whatever. And he was like, you know, you can't have like 2 jobs at the same time, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm not gonna do that again. And he's like, okay, well, you know, that's fine. And then I go back to my desk. I see there's a new meeting scheduled out of nowhere for like the next hour. So before this, you had like a meeting scheduled every Thursday or something for your progress reports, like stuff like that. And I'd been in the job for like a month or half or what at that point. But I had only been like on calls for like a week or something. And I was supposed to have my meeting scheduled for like Thursday or something, but it got pushed to like today, which was earlier in the week. And I was like, okay, there's no way that I just had like a talk with him in person about me like ditching my job, and he's just going to say like a random meeting that's gonna happen like in an hour for nothing. I'm definitely getting fired. And I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna give you the chance. No, either during lunch or like I asked for like a bathroom break. I was like, hey, can I like, you know, do something, like whatever. I just walked out. Maybe I didn't even ask for a break. Maybe I just like turned my computer off and walked out. But either way, I was like, I'm not about to get fired. Like, I'm just like not showing up. So I didn't show up for the job ever again. I got a text from the company contracting me being like, you know, your contract been terminated, yeah, whatever. I didn't even get to Uber Eats drive for that long either, for other reasons. And I'm like, that's an L. So I was at a job for like a minute until I got another one, and that's it.